Hello there, my sleepy citizens. Tonight, we journey into the shadowed streets of Gotham City, where mysteries lurk and the Dark Knight stands vigilant against the forces of chaos. We bring you tales of Batman, uncovering different sides of the man behind the mask. And as our journey through these stories winds down, a calm ambience of Gotham's streets will carry you throughout the night, bringing you to restful sleep without interruptions from any ads. If you enjoy these tales, please be sure to give us a like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what story you'd like to hear next. But for now, let's get cozy and step into the world of Gotham. The rain had fallen steadily over Gotham for 3 days, turning the city's Gothic architecture slick and gleaming under streetlights that seemed to struggle against the darkness. Lightning flashed silently in the distance as Batman stood atop the cathedral spire, his cape weighted with rainwater, listening to the urgent voice in his cowl. "We've lost contact with Arkham," Commissioner Gordon's voice crackled with static and tension. "Security systems went dark 10 minutes ago. Backup generators failed to engage." Batman's eyes narrowed as he surveyed the distant silhouette of Arkham Island, barely visible through the sheets of rain. The facility's usual perimeter lights were absent, leaving only a hulking shadow against the stormy sky. "Any distress calls before communications went down?" he asked, already moving, the momentum of his descent carrying him from the cathedral's stone guardian to the adjacent rooftop. "Just one. Fragmented. Something about the power room being compromised." Gordon's voice tightened. "The storms flooded the low roads to the island. GCPD response will be delayed by at least 40 minutes. Batman had already calculated as much. The timing, during the heaviest rainstorm of the year when island access was most restricted, suggested planning, not opportunity. "I'm on my way. Keep the GCPD back until I've assessed the situation." "You think it's a trap?" Batman launched his grapnel toward a lower building, the momentum of his swing carrying him through the rain-swept darkness. "I think someone chose tonight very carefully." The Batmobile cut through flooded streets, its modified engine growling as it parted the rising waters. In his mind, Batman was already reviewing Arkham's current high-risk inmates. Joker had been recaptured 3 weeks ago after his latest chemical plant scheme. Crane had been in custody for months, seemingly docile but always calculating. Dent's cooperation had been improving in therapy, but that often preceded his most violent breaks. And Waylon Jones, Killer Croc, had been transferred back to Arkham last month after nearly drowning 2 guards at Blackgate. 4 of his most dangerous adversaries, all contained within Arkham's walls. When the lights went out, Alfred, Batman activated his secondary comm channel as the Batmobile approached the bridge to Arkham Island. "I need a status update on Arkham's security systems." "Working on it now, sir," Alfred replied, the sound of rapid keystrokes accompanying his voice. "Most systems are non-responsive, but I'm detecting fragmented data packets. The security grid didn't simply fail, it was methodically dismantled." Batman's suspicions hardened into certainty. "Upload the most recent facility schematics to my cowl, and notify Nightwing that I may need backup." "Already done. Master Dick is currently handling a situation downtown, but says he can be at Arkham within 30 minutes if needed." The Batmobile slowed as it approached Arkham's main gates, which hung partially open, swaying slightly in the wind. No guards were visible in the security booth. The usual harsh floodlights that bathed the entrance in stark brightness were dark, leaving only the vehicle's headlights to cut through the gloom. Batman exited the Batmobile, the rain immediately soaking his exposed lower face as he surveyed the entrance. His cowl switched to detective mode, revealing heat signatures. 2 bodies in the security booth, both still alive but unconscious. Not a massacre, then. At least not yet. Moving swiftly but cautiously, he approached the booth, noting the security panel had been precisely disassembled rather than smashed, components removed with surgical precision. The guards showed no signs of physical trauma, but their breathing was unusually shallow. With practiced efficiency, Batman extracted a small sample from one guard's bloodstream, his cowl analyzing the composition. The results confirmed his suspicion. Traces of Scarecrow's fear toxin, but in a sedative variant rather than the usual hallucinogenic formula. They hadn't been terrorized. They'd been quietly neutralized. The implications were troubling. Crane rarely opted for subtlety when terror was an option. The sedative approach suggested collaboration. Someone had convinced him to modify his formula for a strategic purpose. Batman moved through the main gates, staying to the shadows despite the absence of active security cameras. The administrative building loomed ahead, its Victorian architecture made more ominous by the darkness. Only occasional flashes of lightning revealed the full scope of the asylum grounds. The treatment center to the east, the intensive containment unit to the west, and the maximum security wing's reinforced structure to the north. A sudden flash of lightning revealed a figure darting between buildings, too quick to identify, but moving with purpose rather than the chaotic scrambling of an escaped inmate. Batman altered his course, following at a distance, using the intermittent darkness between lightning flashes to close the gap. The figure disappeared into the treatment center, leaving a door slightly ajar. Batman paused, scanning the building with his cowl's enhanced vision. Multiple heat signatures moved within, some clustered in what appeared to be offices or secure rooms, others moving erratically through corridors. The pattern matched a partial breakout. Staff sheltering in place, inmates roaming free, but no mass exodus from the building itself. "Alfred," Batman whispered, "any progress on restoring Arkham's systems?" "Nothing yet, sir. Whatever sabotage occurred was remarkably thorough. I'm attempting to access the backup systems, but they appear to have been compromised weeks ago. Someone planted dormant subroutines throughout Arkham's network." The level of preparation confirmed Batman's worst fear. This wasn't an impulsive breakout, but a coordinated plan months in the making. And given the precision, he had a strong suspicion about the mastermind. Batman slipped through the treatment center's door, immediately noting the scent of antiseptic overlaid with something sharper, the faint chemical odor he associated with Crane's work. The corridor ahead was dimly lit by emergency lighting, the red glow casting long, distorted shadows on the walls. A soft noise from a nearby room drew his attention, not the chaotic sounds of violence or escape, but a controlled, rhythmic tapping. Batman approached cautiously, easing the door open to reveal a young woman in a lab coat huddled under a desk, tapping a pen nervously against a clipboard. "Dr. Park." Batman read the name badge visible in his cowl's enhanced vision. The woman startled, nearly striking her head on the desk. "Batman?" Her voice quavered, but relief was evident. "Thank God, they're all out. All of them." "Who orchestrated this?" Batman asked, helping the psychiatrist to her feet. Her hands were cold and trembling. "I don't know exactly. The power went first, then the backup generators. Then we heard..." She swallowed hard. Laughter. "Over the PA system. Joker." He was reading off security codes, staff locations, information he shouldn't have had access to. Batman frowned. Joker was chaotic, but far from technically adept. The security sabotage didn't align with his methods. What happened next? Different areas reported problems simultaneously. Fear toxin in the East Wing ventilation, flooding in the lower levels, and explosions, controlled ones, at key security junctions. Dr. Park's professional composure was returning, her clinical mind cataloguing events despite her fear. It wasn't random. Each incident neutralized a different containment system. Where were you when it started? Observation Room 6, reviewing Crane's latest psychological evaluation. A tremor passed through her body. He knew Batman. He looked right at the camera and said, "Time to spread our wings, Doctor." Then the power went out. Batman processed this information rapidly. The scope suggested multiple high-level inmates working in concert, something that rarely occurred given their conflicting pathologies and egos. Something or someone had united them, at least temporarily. A distant crash echoed through the building, followed by manic laughter that sent Dr. Park shrinking back against the wall. The Joker was somewhere in the treatment center, and getting closer. Is there a secure location nearby? Somewhere with independent ventilation? Batman asked urgently. Dr. Park nodded. The pharmaceutical vault hermetically sealed, security code 5293. Go there. Now, stay quiet, stay hidden. Batman handed her a small breathing mask from his utility belt. Use this if you smell anything unusual. As Dr. Park hurried down the corridor, Batman moved in the opposite direction, toward the source of the laughter. The red emergency lights cast everything in a crimson glow that distorted shapes and distances, creating a disorienting effect that would advantage those familiar with the environment. He switched his cowl back to detective mode, tracking heat signatures through walls. 3 figures were moving erratically 2 corridors ahead, 1 leading, 2 following. Their movement patterns suggested the followers were in some form of chemical distress, probably minor inmates under Joker's influence. Batman took to the ceiling, using exposed pipes to traverse the corridor silently. As he approached an intersection, the laughter grew louder, punctuated by the sound of breaking glass and incoherent mumbling from the followers. Come along, Joker's voice lilted through the darkness. So much to do, so many people to terrify. Daddy Joker needs his little helpers, bright-oined and bushy-tailed. Batman positioned himself at the junction, waiting as the footsteps grew closer. When Joker appeared beneath him, Batman remained motionless, observing. The clown was unusually focused, consulting what appeared to be a hand-drawn map as he walked. 2 disheveled inmates stumbled after him, their eyes wide and unfocused, occasionally giggling or twitching. Now let's see, Joker muttered, tapping the map. Johnny Boy should have the East Wing nice and terrified by now. And old Two-Face is probably finished with his little judicial review of the staff. He giggled to himself. Which means it's almost time for the main event. Batman's suspicions crystallized. The escapees weren't just fleeing. They were executing specialized roles in a larger plan. And Joker's reference to a main event suggested the asylum breakout might only be the prelude. In one fluid motion, Batman dropped from his position, landing silently behind the 2 affected inmates. A swift nerve strike rendered them unconscious before they could alert Joker, who continued walking, absorbed in his map and monologue. And dear Croc should be finishing his swimming lesson with the security team right about now. Joker checked an actual watch, the incongruously normal gesture at odds with his wild appearance. Which means Batsy will be getting very, very distracted, Batman finished now, directly behind the Joker. The clown froze mid-step, then slowly turned, his permanent grin widening with what appeared to be genuine delight. "Batsy, right on time, though I must say, finding me first wasn't in the program." He pouted dramatically. "You're supposed to be saving those tedious doctors in the East Wing from Crane's special perfume, or fishing guard bits out of the plumbing courtesy of our scaly friend." Batman grabbed Joker by his lapels, lifting him against the wall. "What's the plan, Joker? What's the main event?" Joker's laugh echoed in the narrow corridor. "Oh, Bat's always so serious. Can't a few criminally insane supervillains have a little get-together without you assuming we're up to something nefarious?" His expression shifted to mock offense. "Maybe we just wanted a change of scenery. Arkham's wallpaper is absolutely dreadful." A scream echoed from somewhere deeper in the facility, high and terrified, abruptly cut short. Batman's grip tightened on Joker's coat. "People are dying while you play games. That's the funny thing about games, Bats." Joker's voice dropped to a confidential whisper, all humor suddenly gone from his eyes. "The best ones have very high stakes and very specific rules." With surprising strength, he broke Batman's grip and danced backward, producing a small remote control from his pocket. For instance, Rule 1, Batman must play with all the clowns, not just his favorite. Before Batman could react, Joker pressed the button. A series of small explosions sounded from different areas of the asylum, followed immediately by alarm klaxons and the hiss of ventilation systems activating. "Oops. Sounds like scary Scarecrow just got an extra delivery of fear toxin to play with, and I think Two-Face's coin just came up very, very bad for the staff in the records room." Joker's smile stretched unnaturally wide. "So many playmates, so little Batman to go around. Whatever will you do?" Batman lunged for the remote, but Joker was already sprinting down the corridor, his laughter echoing off the walls. "Better hurry, Bats. The night is young, but I'm afraid some of Arkham's finest won't live to see the dawn." The choice was clear but agonizing: pursue Joker and the remote that could trigger further chaos, or respond to the immediate threats now facing Arkham's trapped staff. Batman activated his cowl comm. "Alfred, I need a full structural map of Arkham's ventilation system, now, and tell Nightwing to expedite his arrival. Sending the ventilation schematics now, sir. Master Dick reports he's 17 minutes out." Batman studied the schematic that appeared in his cowl display, quickly identifying the primary distribution nodes. If Crane had introduced fear toxin into the system, the East Wing would be compromised within minutes. His decision made, Batman fired his grapnel toward a maintenance access panel, disappearing into the ceiling as Joker's laughter faded into the darkness. The ventilation shafts of Arkham were a cramped network of metal arteries running throughout the facility, carrying air and now fear toxin to every corner of the asylum. Batman moved swiftly through the narrow passages, his cowl's filtration system protecting him from the toxin that had already begun to spread through certain sections. His objective was the main distribution hub in the East Wing, where he could potentially isolate the contaminated airflow. But first, he needed to assess the situation in the areas already affected. Through ventilation grates, he glimpsed the effects of Crane's handiwork. Staff members cowering in corners, swatting at invisible threats, their faces contorted in primal terror. Some inmates had broken free in the chaos, while others remained locked in their cells, equally afflicted by the hallucinogenic toxin. The Batman paused above an especially distressing scene. A security guard had barricaded himself in a small office but was clearly suffering acute toxin exposure. The man fired his weapon repeatedly at the empty doorway, screaming about crawling horrors coming for him. "Alfred," Batman whispered, "I need you to override any functioning PA systems in the East Wing. Broadcast on a loop that help is coming, and to stay in secure rooms with sealed doors." "Attempting override now, sir. It appears some announcement systems are still operational on backup power." Batman continued through the ventilation system, eventually reaching a junction where the metallic walls were coated with an oily residue, the concentrated form of Crane's toxin recently released. He extracted a sample for later analysis, then followed the trail to its source. The distribution hub was a large mechanical room dominated by massive fans and filtering systems. In the center, illuminated by the eerie emergency lighting, stood Scarecrow. The lanky figure was hunched over a complex apparatus connected to the main ventilation intake, his mask-stitched grin aimed downward in concentration. "Fear is fascinating, isn't it, Batman?" Crane spoke without looking up, somehow aware of Batman's presence despite his silent approach. "How quickly it reduces the human mind to its most primitive state. Doctors, guards, patients, all equal in terror." Batman dropped from the ceiling, landing in a half-circle of clear space around Scarecrow. "It's over, Crane. Shut down the distribution system." Scarecrow straightened, his ragged form seeming to elongate in the red emergency light. "Over? We've barely begun the experiment." He gestured to a series of canisters connected to the ventilation system. Phase 1 was merely sedative, to neutralize perimeter security. Phase 2 introduces paranoid hallucinations to create confusion among the staff. But Phase 3, he lovingly caressed a larger canister with elongated fingers. Phase 3 targets the amygdala directly, pure distilled panic. No hallucinations, just overwhelming, paralyzing dread. "You're inducing a controlled mass psychotic break," Batman realized, noting the precision of Crane's setup. "This isn't just about escape. You're gathering data." "Such a keen mind." Scarecrow's voice carried a note of genuine appreciation. "Yes, Batman. Arkham has provided me with subjects, but denied me proper scientific observation. Tonight remedies that oversight." Batman moved closer, noting the timing mechanisms on the canisters. The third phase was set to deploy in less than 3 minutes. "And your alliance with Joker, Two-Face, and Croc. How does that serve your research?" Scarecrow tilted his head, the burlap mask shifting slightly. "Convergent interests, divergent methodologies. Joker wants chaos. Dent wants perverted justice. Jones wants hunting grounds. I want data." He spread his arms. "Arkham provides all of us with what we desire, at least for one glorious night. And after?" Batman edged closer to the distribution apparatus, analyzing its components for the quickest way to neutralize it. Scarecrow's voice lowered conspiratorially. "After is when our separate paths truly diverge, Dark Knight. But that's a hypothesis for another." Batman lunged forward, hurling 3 batarangs simultaneously, one at the timing mechanism, one at the connecting tubes, and one at the overhead emergency lighting. Darkness engulfed the room as the batarangs found their targets, the distribution system sputtering and hissing as pressure escaped from severed lines. Scarecrow reacted with surprising agility, releasing a cloud of toxin directly from his gauntlets as he backpedaled. "Your timing is impeccable as always, Batman," he called through the darkness. "But I've already collected sufficient preliminary data from this wing. The secondary systems in the intensive treatment center should be deploying now." A distant alarm sounded, followed by the mechanical hum of another ventilation system activating. Batman realized Crane had anticipated his intervention. preparing backup systems to continue his experiment regardless. Through the cowl's night vision, Batman tracked Scarecrow's retreating form, noting he was headed not toward an exit but deeper into the facility. This confirmed his suspicion that escape wasn't the primary objective of tonight's chaos. "Alfred?" Batman called as he disabled the remaining canisters. "I need the status on the intensive treatment center and locate any staff still trapped in the East Wing." "The intensive treatment center's internal sensors are offline, sir, but thermal imaging from satellite shows unusual heat patterns consistent with multiple fires. As for staff locations, I'm detecting approximately 12 personnel heat signatures in the East Wing, most concentrated in the secure records room and primary staff lounge." Batman made his decision. The East Wing toxin distribution had been neutralized, but those already exposed would need the antidote. He produced several small pellets from his utility belt and inserted them into the now disabled ventilation system, manually adjusting the remaining operational fans to circulate the antidote compound. "Begin full GCPD response," he instructed Alfred. "Have medical teams standing by at all external entrances with toxin antidotes, but warn them this isn't a standard breakout. The escapees appear to be executing coordinated roles in some larger plan." "Understood, sir. Commissioner Gordon has established a perimeter and awaits your signal before sending in tactical teams." With the East Wing situation temporarily stabilized, Batman turned his attention to the intensive treatment center, where Two-Face had reportedly been targeting staff members for his twisted version of justice. He moved swiftly through the maintenance corridors connecting the wings, every sense alert for the other escaped inmates who might cross his path. The intensive treatment center presented a stark contrast to the toxin-induced panic of the East Wing. Here, the chaos bore the unmistakable signatures of Two-Face's methodical madness. Staff and low Sagati inmates forced to sort themselves into two groups, their fates determined by the flip of a coin. Through observation panels, Batman could see Dent standing in the central security hub, surrounded by kneeling figures. His scarred profile was illuminated by the screens of the security monitors he'd somehow managed to keep operational. The coin flashed in the dim light as it spun through the air again and again. Batman accessed a maintenance shaft that would position him above the security hub. As he crawled through the narrow space, he caught fragments of Two-Face's pronouncements. "Corruption cannot hide behind badges or degrees." The coin flipped. Heads. "Consider yourself fortunate, Doctor. Your colleagues weren't so lucky." Batman reached the grate above the security hub, surveying the scene below. 6 staff members kneeled in a line, their hands bound behind them. 2 others lay on the floor, unconscious or worse. Two-Face paced before a bank of monitors, occasionally pausing to study certain screens. "The scales must be balanced," Two-Face continued, addressing his captives. "For too long you've hidden behind Arkham's walls, dispensing your version of treatment, your version of justice." He gestured to the monitors. "But tonight, true justice returns to Arkham." Batman noted that the screens showed various sections of the asylum. The flooded lower levels where Killer Croc was hunting, the toxin-affected East Wing, and the administrative building where Joker had been headed. Two-Face was monitoring the entire operation. With careful precision, Batman removed the grate and prepared to drop into the room. But before he could move, Two-Face spoke again, his tone changing. "He's here," Dent announced, turning his unscarred side toward the ceiling. "Aren't you Batman, watching, judging, preparing to impose your brand of justice?" Batman paused, then dropped into the center of the room, cape billowing around him. "This isn't justice, Harvey. These people aren't on trial. Two-Face's scarred mouth twisted in what might have been a smile. Everyone in Arkham is on trial every day. Doctors judging patients, guards judging threats, administrators judging costs versus care. He flipped the coin again, catching it without looking. Tonight, I'm merely making the process explicit. And your partnership with Joker, Crane, Jones, how does that factor into your sense of justice? Batman kept his voice level, noting the position of each hostage, calculating the quickest way to neutralize Dent without endangering them. Two-Face gestured to the monitors. Temporary convergence of interests. Joker provided the technical expertise. Surprising, I know, but the clown has hidden depths when properly motivated. Crane provided the chemical persuasion to ensure cooperation from certain key personnel. Jones provided the muscle to breach secure areas. His hands strayed to the gun at his hip, and I provided the strategic planning, the justice. This was your plan all along, Batman realized, connecting the precise nature of the breakout with Dent's methodical mind. The others are just playing their parts. Parts they chose, Two-Face corrected, flipping the coin absently. Everyone had their own motivation for participating, their own targets. A cold certainty settled over Batman. This isn't just about escape or terrorizing Arkham. You're each after something specific. Two-Face's unscarred side showed a flash of the prosecutor Harvey Dent had once been. Sharp, analytical, driven. Records, research, personnel files, contingency plans. He gestured to the bound staff members. These people know where certain informational treasures are kept. The kind not stored on hackable computers. The kind that could be very problematic if released. Batman's mind raced through the implications. Arkham housed psychological profiles and treatment notes on every major criminal in Gotham. Information that could reveal weaknesses, triggers, obsessions. Data that in the wrong hands could be weaponized against the city's defenders, including himself. Harvey, Batman began, taking a step forward. Whatever you're after, it's not worth. Stop! Two-Face commanded, the gun now aimed at the nearest hostage's head. Your turn for judgment has not yet arrived. With his free hand, he flipped the coin high, watching its arc with unnatural focus. But Batman had anticipated this moment, throwing a batarang with precision timing to intercept the coin mid-air. The metal disc and silver dollar collided with a sharp ping, both clattering to the ground, out of Two-Face's reach. The disruption of his ritual sent Two-Face into momentary confusion, exactly the opening Batman needed. He launched forward, catching Dent's gun hand and forcing it upward as it discharged, the bullet harmlessly striking the ceiling. With a calculated strike to pressure points in Dent's wrist, Batman forced him to release the weapon. No! Two-Face roared, his composed demeanor shattering. The judgment isn't complete. The scales aren't balanced. Batman delivered a precise blow that sent Two-Face staggering backward into the security console. The scales are never balanced through violence, Harvey. You taught me that once. For a moment, confusion flickered across the undamaged side of Dent's face. A glimpse of the district attorney who had once worked alongside Batman before acid and trauma created Two-Face. But the moment passed, replaced by cold fury. Two-Face lunged for the fallen coin, but Batman was faster, securing it with his boot. It's over, Harvey. Surrender now. A bitter laugh escaped Dent's ruined lips. Over? You still don't understand, do you? He gestured toward the security monitors. This was never about escape. It was about acquisition. And while you've been dealing with us, he tapped one screen showing Joker in what appeared to be a records vault. hastily stuffing files into a bag. The real objectives are already being secured. Batman quickly scanned the remaining monitors, noting with growing alarm that each showed a similar scene. Scarecrow photographing patient treatment protocols. Killer Croc ripping through a reinforced door marked biochemical storage. The breakout had been a distraction, allowing each villain to target specific information or materials. "What are they after, Harvey?" Batman demanded, securing Two-Face's wrists with reinforced restraints. "What's the end game?" Two-Face's expression settled into studied neutrality. "Gotham has secrets, Batman. Arkham has more. Some secrets are buried in files, some in mines, some in..." He was cut off by a distant explosion that shook the building, causing dust to filter down from the ceiling. "Alfred," Batman called urgently while moving to free the hostages. "Explosion in the facility. Location? Southwest quadrant, sir, the old records annex adjacent to the biochemical storage vault." Batman's concern deepened. The records annex contained the oldest, most confidential patient histories, including detailed psychological assessments of Gotham's most dangerous criminals, compiled over decades. Combined with materials from the biochemical vault, such information could enable targeted psychological warfare on an unprecedented scale. With the hostages freed and Two-Face secured to a structural support column, Batman turned his attention to the most pressing threat. Based on the security feeds, Joker appeared to be closest to an exit point, with whatever materials he'd acquired. "Stay here," he instructed the freed staff. "GCPD will breach the building soon. Tell them Two-Face is secure, but Joker, Scarecrow, and Killer Croc are still active." Batman moved swiftly toward the records annex, using maintenance corridors and ventilation shafts to avoid the scattered groups of escaped inmates roaming the halls. Halfway there, his Calcom activated. "Sir," Alfred's voice was tense. "Thermal imaging shows a significant heat bloom developing in the biochemical storage area. It appears something volatile is being mixed." Batman quickened his pace. If Crane had access to Arkham's chemical compounds, he could potentially develop toxins far more potent than anything he'd deployed before. And if that knowledge was shared with Joker... The records annex was in disarray when Batman arrived. Filing cabinets overturned, papers scattered, and several small fires burning unchecked. But Joker was nowhere in sight. Instead, a trail of disturbed documents led toward a section of wall that hung open, revealing a passage that shouldn't have existed. "Alfred, there's a hidden passage connecting the records annex to what appears to be a maintenance tunnel. It's not on any of the schematics you sent. Most concerning, sir. Accessing historical blueprints now. It appears that tunnel may be part of the original asylum structure, predating modern renovations. Limited records suggest it connects to the old water treatment system, which would lead directly to Killer Croc's hunting ground in the flooded sublevel." Batman followed the passage, the sounds of dripping water growing louder as he descended. The air became thick with humidity and the distinctive odor of stagnant water and decay. The passage opened into a partially flooded chamber dominated by massive pipes and filtration equipment long abandoned. Water reached knee-height, black and still except for subtle ripples emanating from deeper in the chamber. Torn pages floated on the surface, remnants of whatever files Joker had deemed unworthy of taking. Batman moved cautiously, every sense alert for the telltale signs of Croc's presence beneath the water. A flicker of movement caught his eye, a flash of green fabric disappearing through a far doorway. Joker, moving with uncharacteristic stealth. Batman started forward but froze as a subtle disturbance in the water shifted from his left to directly before him, faster than should have been possible for something large. He fired his grapnel upward just as the water erupted, Killer Croc's massive form lunging upward with jaws wide. Batman swung above the creature's reach, landing on a rusted catwalk that groaned under his weight. Below, Croc circled slowly, his reptilian eyes fixed upward. "I smell your fear, Batman," Croc's guttural voice echoed in the chamber. "It's different tonight, sharper. You're afraid you've finally lost." "Where's Joker going, Jones?" Batman demanded, tracking Croc's movements while scanning for a path to follow the fleeing clown. "What did he take from the records?" Croc's laugh was a rumbling growl that vibrated the water's surface. "Insurance." That's what he called it. Insurance against you, against the others. He dipped partially beneath the surface, only his eyes and the ridged scales of his back visible. Smart clown, always thinking ahead. Batman needed to pursue Joker, but leaving Croc free to hunt was an unacceptable risk. The catwalk provided temporary safety, but the rusted supports were already weakening under stress. He needed to neutralize the threat, quickly. Reaching into his utility belt, Batman extracted 3 specialized capsules designed specifically for encounters with Croc. Each contained a powerful sedative, combined with a buoyancy agent, ensuring that even if Croc submerged after exposure, he would float rather than sink and drown. With precise timing, Batman threw the first capsule at the water near Croc's position. The creature lunged away, but the capsule's dispersal pattern was wide, creating a cloud of particles that clung to the exposed scales of his back. "Tricks," Croc snarled, thrashing in the water. "Always tricks instead of facing me like prey should." "You're not hunting tonight, Jones," Batman stated flatly, dropping the remaining capsules in a pattern designed to herd Croc toward the chamber's shallowest section. "You're being hunted." As the sedative began to take effect, Croc's movements grew sluggish, his massive form listing to one side. With a final surge of rage, he charged the catwalk's supports, ripping one free in a shower of rust and metal fragments. The structure groaned and tilted, forcing Batman to leap to an adjacent pipe. But Croc's final effort had cost him the last of his strength. The sedative and buoyancy agent worked in tandem, leaving him floating on the surface, conscious but immobilized, his reptilian eyes burning with impotent fury. Batman secured Croc with reinforced restraints designed specifically for his physiology, then turned his attention to the doorway through which Joker had disappeared. The passage beyond led upward, eventually connecting to what appeared to be a service tunnel for the asylum's oldest section. "Alfred, I've neutralized Croc, but Joker's moving through the old service tunnels with whatever he took from records. Can you track heat signatures in that section?" "Attempting to, sir, but the tunnel walls are particularly dense in that area. However, I'm detecting movement near the southeastern perimeter, possibly someone attempting to exit the grounds." Batman picked up his pace, following the tunnel as it gradually ascended toward the surface. Joker's hasty footprints were visible in the accumulated dust, confirming he was on the right track, but something about those prints troubled him. They were too purposeful, too direct. Joker was moving with uncharacteristic focus. The tunnel ended at a metal door that had been forced open, leading into the asylum's old gardening shed, rarely used since the modernization of the grounds. Beyond it, Batman could see the perimeter wall and a rope dangling from its top. "Stop," a familiar voice called from the shadows of the shed. Or rather, "Please do come closer, Batman. We've been waiting for you." Batman paused, instantly alert to the plural. From different corners of the shed emerged Joker and Scarecrow, the former clutching a bulging satchel, the latter holding what appeared to be a modified delivery system for his fear toxin. "Quite the evening, isn't it?" Joker giggled, but the sound lacked his usual manic edge. Full of surprises and plot twists and dramatic revelations. Just how I like my Wednesdays. It's over, Batman stated, assessing the small space for tactical advantages. Two-Face and Killer Croc are already in custody. GCPD is minutes away from breaching the asylum. Oh, we're counting on that, Scarecrow interjected, his voice clinically detached. The timing is rather crucial, actually. Batman's eyes narrowed behind his cowl. Whatever you've planned, it won't work. The materials you've stolen. Stolen? Joker's face contorted in mock offense. Such an ugly word for such a beautiful act of liberation. These files, he patted the satchel lovingly, were gathering dust in Arkham's bowels. Now they'll serve a much higher purpose. Which is? Scarecrow tilted his head, the burlap mask shifting slightly. Knowledge is the ultimate weapon, Batman. Arkham doesn't just house Gotham's insane. It houses their secrets, their weaknesses, their breaking points. His voice lowered to a whisper. Including yours. A cold certainty settled in Batman's stomach. The patient records would contain detailed psychological profiles, not just of the inmates, but of everyone who had ever undergone evaluation at Arkham, including Bruce Wayne, who had voluntarily submitted to psychological assessment years ago as part of his funding initiatives for the asylum. The records are incomplete, Batman stated, taking a measured step forward, and heavily redacted. Oh, individual files might be, Joker agreed, bouncing slightly on his toes with barely contained excitement. But patterns, Batsy. Patterns emerge when you have enough pieces, and we have so many pieces now. He tapped his temple. Plus a few key insights from our dear Dr. Crane here, who's been conducting his own little psychological assessment of you for years. Batman calculated his options. Both villains stood between him and the exit. The shed offered limited mobility, and any sudden movement risked triggering whatever delivery system Scarecrow was holding. The priority was securing the stolen records before they could be used. And the biochemical compounds from the storage vault? Batman asked, subtly shifting his weight to prepare for movement. What role do they play in your plan? Scarecrow raised the device in his hand slightly. An insurance policy, my newest compound, designed specifically with your particular neurochemistry in mind, based on your previous reactions to my toxins, tailored to target your deepest, most primal fears. Enough talk, Batman declared, suddenly hurling 3 smoke pellets toward the ground between them. The small space filled instantly with thick, obscuring vapor. Batman moved with practiced precision, first toward Joker and the satchel of records, but the clown had anticipated this, dancing backward through the door, remarkably nimble despite the confined space. Joker called through the smoke. No cutting in line, Bats. Scary Scarecrow gets the first dance. As if on cue, Batman heard the distinctive hiss of Scarecrow's delivery system activating. Even through his cowl's filtration, he caught the faintest whiff of something acrid and chemical. A new variant of the fear toxin, different from what had been deployed in the East Wing. Batman held his breath, firing his grapnel at the shed's low ceiling and pulling himself upward just as Scarecrow lunged through the smoke, needle-tipped fingers grasping at empty air. You can't escape fear, Batman, Crane's voice echoed from below. It finds you in the dark places. It waits for you in the shadows you cast. The smoke was beginning to clear, revealing Joker already halfway to the perimeter wall, satchel clutched tightly under one arm. Batman made his decision, dropping from the ceiling directly onto Scarecrow, driving him to the ground with calculated force. Enough to incapacitate, not to seriously injure. Crane struggled briefly, then went limp, the impact having knocked the breath from his lungs. Batman secured him with restraints, then turned toward the fleeing Joker, launching himself in pursuit. Joker had reached the rope dangling from the perimeter wall, but paused to look back, his perpetual grin widening as he saw Batman emerging from the shed. "That's right, follow the white rabbit, chase the carrot, eyes on the prize," he cackled, scaling the rope with surprising agility. Batman fired his grapnel at the top of the wall, the mechanism pulling him upward faster than Joker could climb. He reached the top just as Joker was pulling himself over, grabbing the clown's garish purple coat. "It's over, Joker," Batman stated firmly, hauling him back from the edge. The records stay at Arkham. Joker didn't resist, instead collapsing into peals of laughter that bordered on hysterical even by his standards. "Oh, Bats! So literal, so focused." Between gasps of laughter, he managed to choke out, "Did you really think we'd put all our cards in one satchel?" Batman's grip tightened on Joker's coat. "What are you talking about?" Joker's laughter subsided to giggles as he gestured toward the satchel. "Open it. Go ahead. Consider it an early Bat birthday present." With one hand maintaining his hold on Joker, Batman cautiously opened the satchel with the other. Inside was not a collection of patient files, but rather bundles of blank paper interspersed with crude crayon drawings of bats and clowns fighting. "You didn't think old Joker would make it that easy, did you?" The clown's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. "While you've been playing hide and seek with us, our little friend has been making her way off the island with the real prizes." "Her?" Batman's mind raced through the possibilities. Harley Quinn was still incarcerated in Blackgate. Poison Ivy was under heavy sedation in Arkham's secure botanical containment. Which meant not to park, Batman realized, remembering the seemingly frightened psychiatrist he'd encountered early in the infiltration. Joker clapped his hands in delight. "Give the Bat a prize, yes indeed, our newest recruit. Not an official member of our little club yet, but she shows such potential, and such a convenient position. Access to all the files, all the security codes, all the chemical storage." He tapped his head. "Planted that little seed months ago during our therapy sessions. Gradually convinced her the asylum was beyond saving, that the only way forward was to burn it all down and start fresh." The enormity of the deception settled over Batman. Dr. Park hadn't been a victim, but a co-conspirator, using her position to facilitate the breakout and escape with the truly valuable materials, while Batman was occupied with the more visible threats. "Where is she taking the files?" Batman demanded, his voice dropping to its most intimidating register. Joker merely shrugged, his smile never wavering. "Who knows? Maybe to publish them in the Gotham Gazette. Maybe to auction them to the highest bidder. Maybe just to study them herself, to understand what makes us all tick." His eyes gleamed with malicious delight, but more importantly, what makes you tick, Batman? All those psychological evaluations, all those professional opinions about what drives a man to dress like a bat and hunt the night. Batman's cowl activated, Alfred's voice urgent in his ear. "Sir, GCPD reports intercepting a vehicle leaving the island via the service tunnel beneath the North Bridge. Female driver, identified as Dr. Psycho Park. She had multiple document cases and what appeared to be laboratory equipment." Relief flooded through Batman, though his expression remained impassive. Did they secure all the materials? Yes, sir. Commissioner Gordon personally inventoried the items. Nothing appears to be missing. Batman turned his attention back to Joker, who continued to grin expectantly. Your plan failed. Dr. Park has been apprehended with all the stolen materials. For a brief moment, Joker's smile faltered, a flash of genuine surprise crossing his painted features. Then the grin returned, wider than ever. Oh well, can't win 'em all. But wasn't it fun trying, all of us together again, just like old times? In the distance, the wail of police sirens grew louder as GCPD vehicles finally penetrated the asylum grounds. Floodlights began to illuminate sections of the perimeter as tactical teams established entry points. Batman secured Joker with reinforced restraints, ensuring the clown wouldn't slip away in the ensuing chaos of police response. This partnership between you, Dent, Crane, and Jones, it won't last. You'll turn on each other the moment it serves your individual interests. Joker leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Maybe that was the point all along, Batsy. Maybe some of us just wanted to watch you run around like a headless bat, trying to predict which way the wind would blow next. His eyes gleamed with malicious intelligence. Or maybe there's an even bigger surprise waiting in the wings, one you haven't sniffed out yet. Batman regarded him silently, recognizing the attempt to plant seeds of doubt. Joker thrived on uncertainty, on the psychological torture of never knowing whether his threats were elaborate bluffs or deadly promises. No more games, Joker, Batman stated firmly. Whatever else you planned ends now. GCPD tactical teams had reached their position, officers securing Joker as Batman briefly explained the situation. With the primary threats contained and the stolen materials recovered, the immediate crisis had passed. But the night's events had raised troubling questions about security at Arkham and the potential for future collaboration among Batman's most dangerous adversaries. Commissioner Gordon approached, his weathered face grave in the harsh police floodlights. We've secured Two-Face, Scarecrow, and Joker. Tactical Team B reports they have Killer Croc contained in the sub-level. Dr. Park is in custody, along with all the materials she attempted to remove from the facility. Batman nodded, his gaze sweeping across the asylum grounds, where officers were systematically rounding up the less dangerous escaped inmates. The breakout was a distraction, Gordon. The real target was information, psychological profiles, treatment records, chemical compounds. They were looking for weaknesses to exploit. Gordon removed his glasses, wiping them with a handkerchief, a habitual gesture when processing disturbing information. Weaknesses in what? Arkham's security. In everyone, Batman replied. The staff, the city leadership, the police. He paused. Me. Gordon replaced his glasses, studying Batman's impassive cowl. You think they've found something useful? I don't know, Batman admitted. But the attempt itself is concerning. It suggests a level of coordination among Arkham's inmates that we haven't seen before. Joker orchestrating a team? Gordon shook his head skeptically. Doesn't seem like his style, too methodical. That's what concerns me, Batman agreed. Someone convinced Joker, Two-Face, Scarecrow, and Killer Croc to temporarily set aside their individual pathologies for a coordinated goal. That takes persuasive power none of them have demonstrated before. Gordon's expression darkened. You think someone else was pulling the strings, someone we haven't identified yet? Batman turned to watch as Joker was led to a transport vehicle, the clown's maniacal laughter echoing across the asylum grounds. I don't know, but I intend to find out. As dawn broke over Arkham Asylum, Batman stood on the facility's highest roof, surveying the aftermath of the night's events. Emergency vehicles surrounded the buildings, their lights casting red and blue patterns across the Gothic architecture. Medical teams treated affected staff and inmates, administering antidotes to Crane's fear toxin. Repair crews were already assessing the damage to security systems and infrastructure. On the surface, order was being restored. The breakout had been contained, the escapees recaptured, the stolen materials recovered. But Batman couldn't shake the sense that something larger had been set in motion, that the night's chaos had served purposes not yet revealed. "Alfred," he spoke into his cowl calm, "I need complete background checks on all Arkham's staff, particularly those hired within the last year. Dr. Park's involvement suggests there may be other sleeper agents within the facility. Already compiling the data, sir, and might I suggest a full review of your own psychological evaluations that might be on file at Arkham, if they were indeed targeting information about you specifically?" Agreed. "Implement Security Protocol 7 for all Wayne Enterprises systems as well. If they were looking for connections between Bruce Wayne and Batman, we need to be prepared for that information to eventually surface." Batman's gaze tracked across the asylum grounds to where Dr. Park was being escorted to a separate police vehicle. Her face showed neither remorse nor fear, only a cold determination that troubled him deeply. She had been thoroughly convinced to betray her oath as a doctor, to risk countless lives, to align herself with Gotham's most dangerous criminals. What had Joker promised her? What had he shown her to inspire such complete conversion? More importantly, was she the only one? As the first true rays of sunlight broke over Gotham's distant skyline, Batman fired his grapnel toward a lower rooftop, beginning his departure from the asylum. The immediate crisis had passed, but instinct told him this had been merely the opening move in a much longer game, one whose rules and ultimate objective remained shrouded in mystery. Arkham's shadows had always housed Gotham's darkest elements, but now those elements were learning to work together, to coordinate, to plan, and that possibility was more terrifying than any single adversary could ever be. Batman disappeared into the early morning light, his mind already working through the implications, the possibilities, the countermeasures. Whatever game had begun in Arkham's darkened halls, he would be ready for the next move. He had to be. Because in Gotham, the night always returned, and with it, the fears that lurked in shadow, waiting for their moment to emerge once more. The night settled heavy over Gotham City, wrapping its skyscrapers in mist and shadow. 3 weeks had passed since the Arkham incident, and on the surface normalcy had returned. The asylum's security systems had been upgraded, its staff carefully vetted, its most dangerous inmates housed in newly reinforced cells. But Batman knew better than to trust surface appearances. As he perched atop the GCPD headquarters beside the lit bat signal, he reviewed the patterns he'd been tracking. Subtle disruptions in Gotham's criminal ecosystem, unusual alliances forming and dissolving, whispers of something larger taking shape in the city's shadow world. Commissioner Gordon emerged onto the roof, his collar turned up against the autumn chill. "Thanks for coming. We've got something you should see." He handed Batman a manila folder containing photographs of a crime scene. The apartment of Dr. Saiko Park, who had been found dead that morning despite being under police protection. "Suicide, apparently," Gordon explained, his tone making clear his skepticism. "Except the timing is too convenient. She was scheduled to undergo detailed questioning tomorrow about her role in the Arkham breakout." Batman studied the photographs, noting the too perfect arrangement of the scene, the lack of genuine indicators of suicidal intent. "This wasn't suicide," he confirmed. "This was staged to eliminate a liability. Gordon nodded grimly. That's what I thought, but here's the kicker. The ME found traces of a toxin in her system. Not one of Crane's usual formulas, but something new. Something that would have caused intense, focused fear before death. Batman's eyes narrowed as he processed this information. They're tying up loose ends, ensuring she couldn't reveal whatever larger plan was set in motion that night. There's more, Gordon added, producing a small evidence bag containing a playing card. Not one of Joker's calling cards, but a standard ace of spades with a bat symbol drawn on it in what appeared to be dried blood. This was clutched in her hand. The lab confirmed the blood is hers. A message, then. Not just an elimination, but a communication intended specifically for Batman. The implications were deeply troubling. Whatever had begun at Arkham wasn't over. It was merely entering its next phase. Batman handed the folder back to Gordon, doubled the protection on all staff involved in the Arkham incident, and moved Joker, Crane, Dent, and Jones to separate facilities. No communication between them, no shared guards, no common medical staff. Gordon raised an eyebrow. You think they're still working together, even back in custody? I think they never stopped, Batman replied, already moving toward the roof's edge. And I think we've only seen the opening moves of whatever game they're playing. As he fired his grapnel and swung into the Gotham night, Batman's mind was already analyzing possibilities, contingencies, countermeasures. The night at Arkham had revealed a new kind of threat, not the chaotic violence of individual rogues, but the calculated menace of coordinated action. His adversaries were learning, adapting, evolving, and so he would do the same. Because in Gotham's eternal battle between light and shadow, between order and chaos, between sanity and madness, standing still meant certain defeat. The hunt continued, as it always would. Batman disappeared into the darkness that had shaped him, that had forged him, that had made him the guardian Gotham needed. The city slept uneasily beneath him, unaware of the forces gathering in its shadows, the calculations being made, the traps being set. But Batman knew, and Batman would be ready. As the dark night vanished into the shadows of his city, one chapter of Gotham's endless story closed, while another prepared to unfold. For across town, behind the neoclassical facade of the Gotham Museum of Art, different eyes watched different shadows, measuring distances, calculating timing, preparing for opportunity. While Batman pursued the echoes of Arkham's chaos, a new threat took shape amid priceless paintings and ancient artifacts. A threat that would soon draw him into an intricate dance of deception, ambition, and artistry gone awry. Our story continues in Heist at the Gotham Museum of Art, where darkness falls on marble halls, silent alarms await their moment, and the finest security system in Gotham faces its greatest test. The Gotham Museum of Art stood like a sentinel against the night sky, its neoclassical columns bathed in the soft glow of strategic lighting. Tonight, the museum had transformed from a quiet sanctuary of culture into a glittering social hub, the annual charity gala drawing Gotham's elite in their finest attire. Champagne flutes clinked delicately as string quartet music drifted through marble halls where priceless artifacts rested in their spotlit displays. Bruce Wayne adjusted his bow tie as he surveyed the grand entrance hall. To the casual observer, he was simply another wealthy patron, perhaps more observant than most. But beneath the tailored tuxedo beat the heart of Gotham's guardian, his senses attuned to the subtle currents of the room. The positioning of security personnel, the vulnerable points in the museum's layout, the faces that seemed just slightly out of place among the city's social register. Quite the turnout, Mr. Wayne, commented museum director Vivian Rhodes, approaching with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The new East Asian exhibit has drawn considerable attention. Bruce returned her smile with practiced charm. It's not every day Gotham hosts artifacts from the Qin dynasty, Dr. Rhodes. I understand security has been enhanced for the occasion. A shadow of concern passed across the director's face. As much as the board would approve, though between us, I'd sleep better if we had a certain caped figure on retainer tonight. Bruce's laugh was genuine. If only she knew how right she was to be concerned. His intelligence network had been buzzing with whispers for weeks, coordinated whispers from sources that normally operated in isolation from one another. Something was converging on the museum tonight, something with multiple moving parts. I'm sure everything will be fine, he assured her, even as his eyes tracked a waiter who moved with just a touch too much grace, whose glances lingered just a moment too long on the security panel near the medieval arms collection. As Dr. Rhodes was called away to greet a major donor, Bruce casually made his way toward one of the service corridors. The benefit of financing half the museum's West Wing expansion was knowing exactly where the blind spots in the security cameras were located. 3 minutes later, he had secured a small earpiece connecting him to Alfred in the Batcave. Anything unusual on the museum's security feeds, Alfred? Nothing outwardly suspicious, sir, came the butler's measured response. Though I've noted 4 separate maintenance requests in different wings within the past hour. Rather efficient for Gotham's civil services, wouldn't you say? Bruce frowned. Too efficient. Cross-section recent known whereabouts of Selina Kyle, Oswald Cobblepot, Pamela Isley, and Harleen Quinzel. Already ahead of you, sir. Miss Kyle was photographed in Milan last week, supposedly. Mr. Cobblepot's Iceberg Lounge has been hosting a private poker tournament all evening, though the man himself has not been seen since 6. Dr. Isley was reportedly spotted near Robinson Park yesterday, and Dr. Quinzel, well, there have been no confirmed sightings since her escape from Arkham 3 weeks ago. Bruce's jaw tightened. 4 high-profile targets in the museum tonight. 4 of his most troublesome adversaries unaccounted for. The coincidence was too perfect. Keep monitoring all security channels. I need to make a brief change of attire. The Botanical Antiquities wing of the museum was hushed and dim, specialized humidity controls creating an atmosphere distinctly different from the rest of the building. Here, preserved plant specimens from throughout history were displayed alongside cultural artifacts, celebrating humanity's complex relationship with the natural world. The crown jewel of the collection, newly arrived and set to be unveiled at midnight, was the Verdant Codex, a mysterious bound volume reportedly containing the lost botanical wisdom of an ancient South American civilization. A security guard named Matthews stifled a yawn as he made his rounds, flashlight beam playing over glass cases containing pressed flowers from Marie Antoinette's garden and fragments of papyrus listing medicinal herbs from Egypt's Middle Kingdom. The wing was closed to gala attendees until the midnight unveiling, making it the quietest section of the museum. Matthews paused, frowning. Had one of the planters always contained a flowering vine? He was certain it hadn't been there during his last sweep. As he approached to investigate, the blossoms trembled slightly, releasing a fine mist of golden pollen that hung in the air like suspended glitter. "Beautiful, isn't it?" came a velvet soft voice from the shadows. Nature's perfect design. The guard's hand moved toward his radio, but slowed as the pollen reached his nostrils. His eyes grew unfocused, his expression slack. Poison ivy emerged into the dim light, her form seeming to flow rather than walk, green skin luminous against the deep burgundy of her gown. a clever disguise that would pass for formal wear at a distance, but was composed of living botanical matter responsive to her will. The Verdant Codex belongs with someone who will honor its wisdom, she told the entranced guard, her fingers gently caressing a fern that seemed to lean toward her touch. Not locked away behind glass for the amusement of those who destroy forests for shopping malls. The guard nodded dreamily. Yes, it deserves freedom. You're going to help me liberate it, Ivy continued, voice hypnotic as the spreading pollen. First, by disabling the environmental alarms around the display room. In the security control room, 2 floors below, the monitor showing the botanical antiquities wing flickered briefly, then stabilized, showing an empty corridor that looped endlessly in a carefully crafted digital illusion. The east wing featured the museum's prized collection of gemstones and jewelry, historical pieces that had adorned royalty and nobility throughout the centuries. The treasures of the Silk Road exhibit had been insured for over $300 million, with the centerpiece, the Azure Empress necklace, accounting for nearly a third of that value alone. Catwoman balanced perfectly in the narrow maintenance shaft above the exhibit hall, her lithe form encased in skin-tight material that absorbed light rather than reflecting it. Through specialized goggles, she studied the security grid below, a complex web of laser triggers, pressure sensors, and thermal detection systems. A smile curved her lips. Challenging, yes, but she had defeated better. Much better. With practiced ease, she unspooled a gossamer thin line and began to lower herself into the room, her body rotating gracefully to navigate between laser beams. The museum had spent millions on this security system, yet they had missed the most obvious vulnerability. The maintenance access installed during last year's renovation, poorly documented in the final schematics and all but forgotten. Their mistake, her opportunity. As she descended, Selina reflected on the unusual circumstances that had brought her here tonight. An anonymous message, a proposed collaboration, a chance to acquire the Azure Empress while the other players created diversions throughout the museum. She typically worked alone, but the challenge had been too intriguing to pass up. Of course, she had her own agenda. The others were welcome to their prizes. Her true target was something else entirely, something the museum didn't even realize it possessed. Her feet touched down silently on a narrow, non-alarmed strip of flooring. With deft movements, she extracted a specialized tool from her belt and approached the first display case. "I wouldn't take another step if I were you," came a gravelly voice from the shadows. Catwoman froze, then relaxed into a casual posture. "You're early, Batman. The party's barely started." Batman emerged partially from the darkness, his cape draping around him like liquid shadow. 4 simultaneous heists. Ambitious, even for you, Selina. She shrugged, the movement elegant even in its simplicity. "A girl needs challenge in her life, though I'm curious how you pieced it together so quickly. Professional courtesy from one of your collaborators. An anonymous tip about tonight's activities." Catwoman's eyes narrowed behind her goggles. "Interesting. I wonder which one decided to hedge their bets. Does it matter? The game ends now, before anyone gets hurt." "Always so serious," she sighed dramatically. "But I'm afraid I can't leave empty-handed, not when I've come so far." A subtle flick of her wrist activated a small device on her belt. Throughout the room, the security sensors blinked simultaneously, momentarily disrupted. "AMP pulse, localized," Batman observed, already moving toward her. 17 seconds before the backup systems engage. Catwoman's smile was predatory. "I only need 10. She moved like quicksilver, vaulting over a display case and shattering the glass of another with her clawed glove. In a fluid motion, she snatched something from inside. Not the Azure Empress necklace as Batman had expected, but a small, seemingly insignificant jeweled hairpin partially hidden behind the more prominent displays. "That's not what you came for," Batman said, closing the distance between them. "No?" Her laugh was like silk sliding over steel. "Maybe you don't know me as well as you think." The backup security system hummed to life, and alarms began to wail throughout the wing. Catwoman launched herself upward, catching her descent line and retracting it rapidly. "We'll have to continue this dance another time," she called down as she disappeared into the maintenance shaft. "Right now you have bigger problems. The Penguin's auction in the West Wing is about to get hostile." Batman stood motionless for a moment, calculating. Selina was right, he couldn't pursue her while 3 other threats unfolded across the museum. And something felt off about this encounter. Too convenient, almost as if a distraction. She had been the distraction. The private collections gallery in the West Wing had been transformed for the gala into an exclusive auction space, where selected patrons could bid on donated artworks with proceeds benefiting the museum's educational programs. Champagne flowed freely among the 50 or so guests assembled in the elegant room, their attention focused on a Monet landscape currently under spirited bidding. None noticed when the service doors at the back of the room quietly locked, nor when the plainclothes security personnel stationed around the perimeter suddenly found themselves covered by small red targeting dots. "Ladies and gentlemen," the auctioneer's rhythmic patter was interrupted by the sharp tap of an umbrella against marble flooring. "I'm afraid there's been a slight change to tonight's proceedings." The Penguin waddled into view, resplendent in white tie and tails, his monocle gleaming under the crystal chandeliers. Behind him filed a dozen men in catering uniforms, each now holding compact submachine guns revealed from beneath serving trays. "The items you've been bidding on," he gestured expansively with his umbrella, "are now being acquired by a private collector, namely myself." His voice maintained its cultured affect, but the cold calculation in his eyes belied any pretense of gentility. "This is outrageous," protested a silver-haired man in the front row. "Do you have any idea who I am?" Penguin's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Judge Samuel Waterson, Federal Circuit Court, currently presiding over the RICO case against the Falcone family. Happily married 30 years to Elizabeth, who adores the ballet and would be devastated if something unfortunate were to happen during next week's performance of Swan Lake." The judge paled and sank back into his seat. "Now then," Penguin continued pleasantly, "my associates will be collecting the paintings. You fine people will sit quietly, and in 10 minutes you may return to your champagne and self-congratulation with an exciting story to tell at your next social gathering." He surveyed the room with evident satisfaction as his men efficiently removed paintings from the walls and auction blocks. Everything was proceeding according to the agreed timeline. The other disturbances throughout the museum would keep security fragmented and confused, allowing him to secure the true prizes, not just the auction pieces, but the 3 privately owned Degas paintings on loan from an anonymous collector. Paintings that contained, hidden beneath layers of innocuous pastoral scenes, a series of banking codes to offshore accounts established during the Second World War. Accounts whose existence had been all but forgotten until Penguin's information network had unearthed a cryptic reference in the diary of a recently deceased financial advisor. The regular museum's pieces were simply a bonus and an effective cover for his true objective. "Sir," one of his men approached discreetly, "the east emergency exit has been blocked, some kind of adhesive compound. Penguin's satisfaction dimmed slightly, and the service corridor, also sealed. He tapped his umbrella thoughtfully against the floor. It seems we have a bat infestation earlier than anticipated. Initiate contingency protocol. The henchman nodded and spoke quietly into a concealed microphone in his sleeve. Throughout the room, other disguised personnel began to move with more urgency, collecting artwork with less care and more speed. A chandelier exploded overhead, showering the room with crystal fragments and plunging half the gallery into shadow. From that darkness descended a familiar caped figure, landing in a crouch before rising to his full, imposing height. "It's over, Cobblepot," Batman announced, his voice carrying the weight of inevitable justice. Penguin sighed dramatically. "Must you always be so predictable, Batman?" "It's over, Cobblepot," he mimicked. "When, in our long association, has anything ever truly been over?" Heroes, he raised his umbrella and fired a rapid succession of projectiles, not at Batman, but at the remaining chandeliers, plunging the room into near-complete darkness save for the emergency lights along the baseboard. In the confusion, guests began to scream and scramble for perceived safety. Batman activated his cowl's night vision, quickly identifying and disarming 2 henchmen before they could harm any civilians. But the darkness worked both ways. By the time order was partially restored, Penguin and several of his men had vanished, along with the most valuable paintings. A security guard rushed into the gallery, breathing heavily. "Batman, thank God we've got a situation in the modern art wing. Some crazy woman with a giant hammer is smashing exhibits and calling it performance art." Batman's expression remained impassive, but inwardly he grimaced. Harley Quinn making her move, right on cue. And if his instincts were correct, while he dealt with her chaos, Penguin would be making his exit through the museum's underground loading dock. He couldn't be everywhere at once, but he could be strategic. "Lock down this wing," he instructed the guard. "No one in or out, and send all available security to the south entrance. The Penguin will be heading that way. But the woman, I'll handle Quinn." As Batman moved swiftly toward the modern art wing, he activated his comlink. "Alfred, I need a complete schematic of all ventilation and maintenance tunnels connecting the museum wings. 4 separate heists, perfectly timed and coordinated. This was planned down to the minute." "Indeed, sir," came Alfred's voice. "And if I may observe, such cooperation among Gotham's more colorful criminals rarely occurs naturally. One wonders who might be orchestrating from behind the scenes." Batman's jaw tightened as he moved silently through the darkened corridors. Alfred had voiced the concern that had been growing in his own mind. These 4, Catwoman, Penguin, Poison Ivy, and Harley Quinn, had worked together before, but never with this level of precision. Someone else was moving pieces on the board. The sound of breaking glass and maniacal laughter echoed from ahead, interrupting his thoughts. One problem at a time. The modern art wing of the Gotham Museum was a stark contrast to the classical architecture of the main building. Here, white walls and polished concrete floors created a minimalist backdrop for provocative contemporary pieces. Current exhibitions featuring everything from large-scale installations to experimental video projections. Tonight, it featured something unscheduled, Harley Quinn's unique brand of chaos. "Step right up, ladies and gents," she announced, twirling her oversized mallet like a baton. She had somehow acquired a red docent blazer with the museum logo worn over her traditional Harlequin outfit. "Welcome to the interactive portion of tonight's exhibition, which I call Stuff That Goes Smash." With theatrical flourish, she brought the mallet down on a glass sculpture, shattering it into thousands of glittering shards that skittered across the concrete floor like ice crystals. The small crowd of gala attendees who had wandered into the wing stood frozen in shock, uncertain whether this was an actual authorized performance piece or something more sinister. For my next act, Harley continued, skipping toward a large canvas covered in delicate intersecting lines of color, I call upon a volunteer from the audience. She pointed randomly at a middle-aged woman in an emerald evening gown. You there, don't you think this painting would look better with a little more red? From her pocket, she produced a spray can and tossed it to the horrified woman, who fumbled and dropped it. No takers, your loss. Harley shrugged dramatically and retrieved the can herself. Critics, am I right? Always so stuffy. As she raised the spray can toward the painting, a batarang struck her hand with precision, sending the can clattering across the floor without breaking her skin. Oh, look who decided to crash the party. Harley's face lit up with genuine delight as she turned to face Batman, who now stood at the entrance to the gallery. Batsy, I was wondering when you'd join the fun. There's nothing fun about destroying priceless artwork, Harley, Batman responded, his voice steady and controlled. She pouted exaggeratedly. Says you, but art is subjective, ain't it? Maybe my art is the act of destruction itself. Ever think about that, Mr. I dress like a giant rodent? These people need to leave, Batman gestured to the frightened onlookers. Now. Ugh, fine. Spoil sport. Harley rolled her eyes. Scram, folks. Mature audiences only from here on out. As the civilians hurriedly made their exits, Batman took measured steps into the gallery, noting the positions of damaged artwork, the locations of potential weapons or projectiles, and most importantly, the small explosive devices Harley had placed at strategic intervals around the room. Not powerful enough to bring down the building, but sufficient to create damaging shockwaves and frightening noise. What's the real play here, Harley? He asked, keeping her attention focused on him. You're making too much noise, drawing too much attention. She cartwheeled backward, landing atop a waist-high sculpture base. Maybe I like attention. Did you ever think of that? Not everything's got some master plan behind it. But Batman had worked with and against Harleen Quinzel long enough to recognize the patterns. The chaos was genuine, but it was also purposeful, calculated. She was keeping him occupied, maintaining his focus here while something else unfolded elsewhere. Who put this together, he pressed. This isn't your style of operation, too coordinated with the others. A flicker of something, surprise perhaps, crossed Harley's face before she masked it with another grin. Wouldn't you like to know? Maybe I'm branching out, developing my methodology. I did have a psychology degree before I found my true calling in Malay-based sculpture. She punctuated this by swinging her weapon at a nearby installation, sending components flying in all directions. Batman dodged a projectile section of piping, closing the distance between them. The bombs, Harley. Deactivation sequence. Her eyes widened in exaggerated innocence. Bombs? Who said anything about bombs? I just brought some party poppers to liven up this snooze fest. Batman's expression remained impassive. 16 seconds before the first one detonates. I count 7 devices. I can reach maybe 4 in time. For a brief moment, the manic energy faded from Harley's demeanor, replaced by something more calculating, a reminder of the brilliant psychiatrist she had once been before the Joker's influence. Then the mask slipped back into place. Oh, all right, you're no fun at all, you know that, she sighed dramatically. Red light, green light, stop on 9. Batman immediately moved to the nearest device, finding a small keypad. Red button, green button, 9 presses of the stop button in sequence. The timer froze. Then the display went dark. See? Harmless fun. Harley called, using his momentary distraction to edge toward an emergency exit. Just wanted to make sure the boring art critics got their hearts pumping a little. The botanical wing, Batman said, not looking up as he deactivated a second device. That's where the others are converging, isn't it? The separate heists are a cover. Harley's laugh echoed off the concrete walls. Aren't you the clever detective? But you're overthinking it, Bats. Sometimes a girl just wants to smash things with her friends. She pushed through the emergency exit, setting off alarms that joined the cacophony of security alerts already blaring throughout the museum. Batman finished disarming the last explosive device, then activated his communicator. Alfred, the separate thefts are misdirection. There's something else happening in the Botanical Antiquities wing. I suspected as much, sir, came Alfred's measured response. I've taken the liberty of accessing deeper architectural plans. There appears to be an old maintenance tunnel connecting that wing to the museum's north loading dock. Installed during the 1950s renovation, and apparently forgotten in subsequent blueprints, Batman was already moving, his footsteps silent despite his urgency. Seal that exit remotely if you can, and alert Commissioner Gordon. We'll need GCPD at every possible egress point. The museum had become a labyrinth of competing agendas, and Batman was beginning to see the pattern emerging from the chaos. 4 master thieves, each creating a distraction while simultaneously securing secondary objectives. But beneath it all ran a current of coordination too precise to be coincidental. Someone was conducting this orchestra of crime, and he had a growing suspicion about who it might be. In the Botanical Antiquities wing, Poison Ivy moved with unhurried grace among the display cases. Several security guards stood in trance-like stillness around the perimeter, their eyes fixed on nothing, subtle green tendrils of vine curling around their ankles. Not restraining them, merely maintaining the pheromone connection that kept them under her influence. Careful with that, she instructed one of her enthralled assistants, as he removed the glass covering from the verdant codex. It has survived 5 centuries. It deserves reverence. The ancient book lay open on its custom display, the vellum pages covered in intricate illustrations of plants, many of which had been driven to extinction by human expansion. To most visitors, it was merely a curious historical artifact. To Ivy, it was nothing less than a sacred text, a record of botanical wisdom lost to the modern world, including formulations for plant-based compounds that could potentially restore damaged ecosystem. Finally, she murmured, gently lifting the codex with gloved hands. You'll help me heal what they've destroyed. From the shadows of the adjoining greenhouse exhibit, a familiar voice responded. By destroying more in the process, that seems counterproductive, Pamela. Ivy didn't turn, continuing to secure the codex in a specialized preservation container. I wondered when you'd find your way here, Batman. How are you enjoying our little soiree? 4 separate heists as cover for what exactly? Batman emerged partially from the shadows, noting the positions of the enthralled guards and the peculiar stillness of the air, heavy with Ivy's pheromones, no doubt. Cover implies we're hiding something, Ivy replied, finally turning to face him. In the dim light, her green-tinged skin seemed to radiate a subtle luminescence. Perhaps we simply have diverse interests that happen to align tonight. Unlikely. Batman took a measured step forward, his filtered cowl providing some protection against the airborne compounds, though not indefinitely. Catwoman works alone. Penguin doesn't share. You and Harley occasionally cooperate, but never with this level of coordination. A slow smile spread across Ivy's face. People can surprise you. Even after all these years, you still think you understand us, categorize us, file us away in neat little folders in that detective mind of yours. The Codex isn't your endgame, Batman continued, scanning the room for what he might have missed. It's valuable to you, certainly, but not worth the risk of orchestrating something this complex. Ivy tilted her head slightly, genuine curiosity crossing her features. You really don't see it, do you? The great detective blind to what's right in front of him. She gestured around the room. Look closer at what you think you know. Batman's eyes narrowed behind his cowl as he reassessed the scene. The climate controls for the rare botanical specimens, the specialized lighting designed to mimic specific geographic conditions, the irrigation system, the museum's water supply, he said, the realization crystallizing. It connects to the city's primary water treatment facility 2 blocks from here. Ivy's smile widened. Very good. Not my usual approach, I admit. Too indirect for my tastes. But sometimes one must compromise when working with associates. Batman was already moving, heading for the control panel that regulated the specialized systems for the botanical exhibits. But 2 of the enthralled guards stepped into his path, their movements mechanical but effective. They won't hurt you unless you force them to, Ivy said conversationally, continuing to back toward a service door with the codex secured. Unlike you, I don't use people as disposable weapons. The filtration controls were still 10 feet away. The guards, while not immediately aggressive, formed a human barrier, and somewhere within that control system, Batman was now certain, Ivy had introduced something, spores, toxins, or some engineered botanical compound designed to enter Gotham's water supply. Whatever you've done, I will undo it, he stated, not as a threat but as simple fact. Perhaps, Ivy conceded, but it will be too late for containment. The dispersal is timed to coincide with the end of our little distraction. In approximately, she glanced at a delicate vine wrapped around her wrist, which had formed into a living timepiece. 3 minutes. Just long enough for us to make our exit. But, as if in answer, the service door behind Ivy opened to reveal Catwoman, the small jeweled hairpin she had stolen now secured in her belt. Right on schedule, Selina purred, though our friend with the umbrella is running behind. Apparently he got greedy with the paintings. Typical. Ivy rolled her eyes. And Harley? Creating a new exit route as we speak, very loudly. Catwoman's gaze shifted to Batman, a complex mixture of emotions crossing her features before settling into her usual playful defiance. You're looking well. The formal wear suits you, even with the cape. Batman's mind worked furiously, calculating options. He could potentially overcome the guards without seriously harming them, reach the controls, and prevent whatever Ivy had planned. But not while also preventing the 2 women from escaping with their stolen items. The water system, Ivy, he pressed. What have you introduced? She regarded him thoughtfully, as if deciding how much to reveal. Nothing permanently harmful to humans, if that's your concern. A specialized fungal bloom that will temporarily bind with common pharmaceuticals found in the water supply, particularly mood stabilizers and certain psychiatric medications, making them inert, Batman concluded grimly. Thousands of Gotham citizens will have their medication disrupted. Ivy's expression hardened, making them aware. For 48 hours they'll see clearly how the city suffocates around them, how the natural world gasps for breath beneath concrete and steel. Sometimes healing requires discomfort first. That's not your decision to make. Yet corporations make worse decisions daily, poisoning the air, the soil, the water, poisoning people, and you call it business? Her voice remained calm, but the plants around her became agitated, leaves trembling with her suppressed emotion. My intervention is temporary. Their damage is forever. The timer on the wall clicked down another minute. Batman could see the internal irrigation system beginning its activation sequence. A regular midnight misting of the sensitive exhibits, now weaponized to carry Ivy's botanical agents into the wider water system. Catwoman, sensing the tension escalating, stepped forward. As fascinating as the environmental ethics debate surely is, we have a schedule to keep. She turned to Batman, her voice lowering. Walk away from this one. Nobody gets hurt, you prevent Penguin's armed robbery from escalating, and in 2 days everything returns to normal. You know I can't do that, Selina. Her smile held genuine regret. I know. That's what makes you, you. She sighed and extracted a small capsule from her belt. Which is why I came prepared. Before Batman could react, she tossed the capsule at his feet, where it burst into a rapidly expanding foam that hardened almost instantly, trapping his boots to the floor. Not permanently, he could break free in 30 seconds, with the proper application of force, but long enough. Consider it a professional courtesy, Catwoman called, as she and Ivy retreated through the service door. The foam dissolves in 2 minutes. Just long enough to miss your window to stop the irrigation sequence, not long enough to miss Cobblepot's getaway. Choose wisely. The door swished closed behind them, leaving Batman immobilized as the control panel continued its automated countdown. 1 minute remaining. He made his decision instantly. Reaching to his utility belt, he extracted a small vial of solvent and applied it to the hardened foam. Within seconds, he could move again, crossing quickly to the irrigation control panel. The system was automated and locked into its program sequence, but automation could be overridden. His fingers flew across the control interface, bypassing security protocols and accessing the core programming. 45 seconds. A careful application of electrical disruption, not enough to damage the sensitive botanical specimens permanently, but sufficient to trick the system into registering a critical failure. 30 seconds. The panel flashed red warnings, but Batman continued his methodical intervention, rerouting the water flow away from the main filtration system that connected to Gotham's water supply, and instead creating a closed loop within the museum itself. 15 seconds. The irrigation system activated on schedule, fine mists beginning to spray across the botanical exhibits. But now, instead of carrying Ivy's compounds into the wider water distribution network, the system merely recycled the water within its own contained environment. The specimens would receive their moisture, but Gotham's water supply remained uncontaminated. Batman straightened, allowing himself a moment of satisfaction before turning his attention to the next priority. Penguin would be making his exit now, likely through the loading dock on the north side. Alfred, he activated his communicator. The botanical threat has been neutralized. Status on Cobblepot? GCPD has established a perimeter around the north loading area based on your earlier instructions, sir. However, there appears to be a disturbance near the east entrance as well. Security cameras show what appears to be Ms. Quinn creating a rather explosive diversion. Covering their escape, Batman concluded. I'm on my way to the east entrance. Have Gordon split his forces. As he moved silently through the now empty corridors of the museum, Batman reflected on the night's events. 4 separate heists, each with its own objective, yet coordinated with precision. Catwoman with her mysterious hairpin, Penguin with his valuable paintings, Ivy with the ancient codex and her thwarted water supply plan, and Harley creating precisely timed chaos throughout. The question remained, who had brought them together? Who had the influence to coordinate such disparate criminal personalities toward a common timeline? That answer would have to wait. For now, there were still criminals to apprehend and stolen items to recover. The east entrance of the Gotham Museum of Art had been transformed into a scene of controlled chaos. 2 police cars had been overturned, though tellingly without injury to the officers, who now stood behind makeshift barricades with weapons drawn. Colorful smoke bombs created disorienting clouds of magenta and electric blue, while occasional firecrackers produced startling bangs that kept everyone on edge without causing actual harm. At the center of it all, Harley Quinn danced and cartwheeled, her movements seemingly random but actually creating a carefully choreographed distraction. "Come on, boys in blue, put a little effort into it," she taunted, executing a perfect backflip to avoid a police officer's attempt to rush her. "This is the most fun you've had all week, admit it." Batman assessed the situation from the rooftop above. Quinn was maintaining the police attention at the east entrance, while the real escape was likely happening elsewhere. Her role had been consistent throughout the evening: create visible chaos, while the others worked more subtly. He activated his thermal imaging, scanning beyond the immediate disturbance. 3 blocks east, a heat signature registered. A vehicle engine, running but stationary. Wait. Batman fired his grapnel and swung in a wide arc over the police barricade, landing silently behind Harley as she prepared to throw another smoke bomb. "Show's over, Harley," he said, causing her to spin around with exaggerated surprise. "Batsy, back for an encore." Her grin was infectious despite the circumstances. "Did you like my performance art? I call it Boys in Blue Get Bamboozled." "No one was seriously hurt," Batman observed. "Not your usual approach." Harley shrugged, twirling her oversized mallet casually. "Maybe I'm evolving as an artist. Or maybe hurting people wasn't the point tonight." She winked conspiratorially. "Sometimes the chaos is just a distraction from the real show." "Where are they headed?" Batman asked, his voice remaining calm and measured despite the urgency of the situation. Harley tilted her head, considering him with surprising thoughtfulness. "You're assuming I know, or that I'd tell you if I did," she sighed dramatically. "The thing about collaborative art installations, Bats, is that everyone only gets their own piece of the canvas, keeps things compartmentalized." As she spoke, Batman noticed her subtle glances toward the northeast, not east where the vehicle waited. Another misdirection. The pieces clicked into place in his mind. The waiting vehicle was yet another decoy. "The underground tunnel system," he stated rather than asked. "The old maintenance passages that connect to the subway." Harley's expression flickered with genuine surprise before she covered it with another grin. "Oh, now you're just showing off with the detective stuff." Batman's hand moved to his utility belt, extracting a pair of specialized restraints. "The performance is over, Harley." She eyed the restraints and then, unexpectedly, set her mallet down and offered her wrists. Fine. Can't blame a girl for trying. Besides, my part's done." As Batman secured the restraints, she leaned in conspiratorially. "But between us, Bats, you might want to check out what Red did to the eastern reservoir filtration system while you were busy with her little museum distraction." Batman's eyes narrowed. "You're claiming there was a secondary target?" Harley's laugh was genuinely amused. "Secondary? Tertiary? We had contingencies for contingencies. That's what happens when you get a bunch of creative types together. Everybody's got ideas." She winked. Maybe there wasn't just one mastermind behind this little caper. Maybe we all brought something to the table. Before Batman could question her further, the sound of approaching police drew his attention. Commissioner Gordon appeared through the thinning smoke, weapon drawn but lowered when he recognized Batman. "We've got Cobblepot cornered in the north loading dock," Gordon reported. But most of the paintings were already transferred to a secondary vehicle, and there's no sign of the other suspects. Batman transferred Harley to the custody of the approaching officers. "There's an old service tunnel connecting to the subway system. Have your men seal all access points within a 6-block radius." Gordon nodded briskly, already speaking into his radio to redirect forces. As the officers led Harley away, she called back over her shoulder, "Don't forget to check the reservoir, Bats. Red's got a real green thumb when it comes to municipal water supplies." "Is she serious?" Gordon asked, frowning. "Partially," Batman replied. "Ivy attempted to introduce something into the museum's water system, but I neutralized it. However," he considered Harley's parting words, "the eastern reservoir served nearly a third of Gotham. If Ivy had established a secondary operation there while the museum heist served as distraction, I need to verify the reservoir's security," he told Gordon. "Can you handle things here?" The commissioner nodded. "Go. We've got the museum secured and evidence teams processing each gallery. I'll have the bomb squad check for any additional surprises Quinn might have left behind." Batman moved swiftly toward the shadows, his mind already plotting the fastest route to the eastern reservoir facility. As he fired his grapnel toward an adjacent building, he activated his communicator once more. "Alfred, I need everything you can find on recent maintenance or construction at the eastern reservoir. Specifically, look for any connection to botanical research or unusual plant deliveries in the area." "Already searching, sir," came the butler's efficient response. "Though I must say, this evening has proven remarkably complex, even by Gotham's unusual standards." Batman swung between buildings, the cool night air rushing past as he traversed the urban landscape with practiced precision. It's not random. The museum was elaborate enough to be the main event, but it feels like a diversion for something bigger. "A concerning thought," Alfred agreed. "Oh, and sir, GCPD just reported that they've secured the Penguin, but the most valuable paintings weren't recovered. Additionally, there's been a curious development regarding Miss Kyle's target." "The hairpin," Batman confirmed, as he landed on a rooftop overlooking the Eastern District. Indeed, museum officials are baffled as to why she would take such a relatively minor piece when the Azure Empress necklace was in the same display. Batman paused, looking out over the city lights toward the distant reservoir facility. "Because the hairpin wasn't catalogued properly. Check imperial records from the Qing dynasty, late 18th century. The minor hairpin likely belonged to a concubine who later became influential in court politics. And this is significant because Selina doesn't steal without purpose. That hairpin would be nearly impossible to fence through normal channels. Too historically significant to sell openly, too obscure to sell privately." Batman resumed his journey, moving with increased urgency. "Unless there's a specific buyer already arranged, someone with particular interest in that historical period. I'll cross-section known collectors with specialization in Qing Dynasty artifacts," Alfred replied. "And sir, regarding the reservoir, I've found something. 3 weeks ago, the city approved emergency maintenance on the filtration system. The contractor listed is a company called Verdant Solutions, established 6 months ago with paperwork that appears immaculate upon cursory inspection." "Too immaculate," Batman concluded. "It's Ivy. She's been planning this for months." The reservoir facility appeared ahead, its security lights creating pools of illumination around the perimeter fence. From his elevated position, Batman could see two security guards making routine rounds, unaware of any potential threat, following standard protocols. Thermal scan shows normal activity, he observed, activating his cowl's enhanced vision mode. No additional personnel, no unusual heat signatures from equipment. He descended silently into the facility grounds, moving from shadow to shadow until he reached the main filtration control building. The door was secured with both electronic and physical locks, untampered with apparently. Batman bypassed them efficiently and slipped inside. The control room hummed with the steady operation of water purification systems, monitors displaying flow rates, chemical composition analyses, and distribution metrics across multiple screens. Everything appeared normal. Perhaps Harley had been misdirecting him after all. But experience had taught Batman to trust his instincts. Something felt wrong about the facility. Something subtle beneath the surface normality. He moved methodically through the control room, checking each system, each monitor, looking for anomalies too small for automated alarms to detect. There, a slight discrepancy in the chlorine levels between the input and output measurements. Minimal within acceptable parameters for the automated systems, but consistent. Something was neutralizing a small percentage of the purification chemicals before the water reached the distribution stage. Batman moved to the maintenance access panel and descended into the actual filtration chamber below. A vast concrete structure where Gotham's water supply passed through layers of specialized filtration media before being treated and distributed to the city. In the dim emergency lighting, everything appeared as expected, until Batman activated his ultraviolet scanner. Then, invisible to the naked eye, a pattern emerged, a thin layer of microscopic growth coating the interior of certain filtration pipes. Not enough to impact water clarity or trigger bacterial contamination warnings, but enough to gradually introduce something into the water supply. "Alfred," Batman communicated quietly. "I've found Ivy's secondary plan. Some kind of engineered biofiltration system growing within the main purification chambers. Analysis suggests it's been developing slowly, organically infiltrating the system over weeks, rather than introduced all at once. Most concerning, sir. Can it be removed?" Batman was already extracting specialized sampling tools from his utility belt. "Yes, but I need to understand exactly what it's designed to do first. If removed improperly, it might release spores or toxins as a defense mechanism." He collected samples of the nearly invisible growth, using his cowl's built-in analysis system to run preliminary tests. The results were puzzling. The biological material wasn't immediately toxic or pathogenic. Instead, it appeared designed to introduce subtle chemical compounds that would only become active when combined with common substances already present in the city's water. "It's a delivery system," Batman realized, "designed to interact with something else, something yet to be introduced." He tapped his communicator again. "Alfred, contact Gordon. I need hazmat teams at the reservoir immediately, and I need all water flow from this facility temporarily diverted to emergency storage tanks for comprehensive testing." "Right away, sir. And what of our museum thieves?" Batman secured the samples and began his ascent back to the control room. "Still at large, but the priority has shifted. Whatever Ivy's planning with the water supply takes precedence." As he emerged into the control room, Batman felt the subtle shift in air pressure that indicated he was no longer alone. He turned slowly to find Catwoman perched casually on a monitoring console, examining her clawed gloves with apparent interest. "Figured you'd make your way here eventually," she said without looking up. Once Harley dropped her little hint, Batman remained perfectly still, assessing. Was that part of the plan too? Directing me to Ivy's secondary operation? Selina's smile was enigmatic as she finally met his gaze. Plans within plans, Bruce. That's how these collaborations typically work. Why are you here, Selina? She slipped gracefully from the console, landing silently on the floor. Would you believe professional courtesy? Or perhaps I have my own agenda that doesn't perfectly align with the others. The hairpin, Batman noted. Not exactly your usual score. Some jobs are about the paycheck, some are about other considerations. She approached him with her characteristic fluid grace, stopping just beyond arm's reach. The reservoir system. It's not what you think. Enlighten me. Catwoman glanced at the monitoring systems, then back to Batman. Ivy's creation isn't designed to poison Gotham. It's a filtration system, removing compounds that current technology can't detect or eliminate. Microplastics, pharmaceutical residues, synthetic hormone disruptors, the invisible pollution that's been accumulating for decades. Batman's eyes narrowed skeptically. And you know this how? Because I've seen her research. This isn't about revenge or eco-terrorism. It's about restoration. Subtle, gradual restoration that works within existing infrastructure. She tilted her head, studying his reaction. Not all of us express our desire to save Gotham by dressing up and punching criminals. Before Batman could respond, the facility's external alarm system activated, GCPD arriving with the hazmat team he had requested through Gordon. You should go, he told her, not moving to apprehend her, despite professional obligations suggesting otherwise. Celine moved toward a ventilation shaft at the far end of the room. The hairpin is going to a private collector, one who actually cares about preserving history rather than locking it behind glass for social status. She paused before disappearing into the shaft. And Bruce? Not everything tonight was what it seemed. Sometimes the real heist isn't about what was taken, but what was left behind. With that cryptic statement, she vanished into the building's infrastructure, leaving Batman alone with the growing sound of approaching emergency responders. Dawn broke over Gotham City, painting the sky in watercolor shades of pink and gold that reflected off glass skyscrapers. In the Batcave, Bruce Wayne stood before a series of displays analyzing the biological samples from the reservoir, while Alfred set down a tray containing coffee and a light breakfast. "A most peculiar night, sir," the butler observed, glancing at the multiple investigations displayed on the cave's monitors. 4 separate heists, a complex botanical agent introduced to the reservoir, and a mysterious parting statement from Ms. Kyle. Bruce nodded absently, his focus on the analysis results. The samples confirmed Selina's claim, at least partially. Ivy's creation appears designed to neutralize specific chemical compounds in the water, particularly synthetic endocrine disruptors and certain pharmaceuticals, an environmentalist approach rather than an attack, Alfred noted, though one assumes the proper channels for water treatment innovation would have been more appropriate than breaking into a secure facility. A small smile touched Bruce's lips. Since when have any of them opted for proper channels? He turned from the analysis display to another monitor showing the recovered items from the museum heist. The pattern still doesn't make sense. Ivy wanted the codex, understandable given her interests. Penguin stole the paintings, but left several equally valuable pieces untouched. Catwoman took a seemingly minor artifact when much more valuable items were available. And Harley created chaos without causing significant harm, Alfred finished, most uncharacteristic. Bruce turned to the final monitor, which displayed a schematic of the Gotham Museum of Art. with indicators showing where each theft and disturbance had occurred. Each operated in a different wing, drawing security and attention in different directions. But why such elaborate coordination for separate objectives? What connects them? Alfred studied the schematic thoughtfully. Perhaps it's not what connects the individual items, but what connects the individuals themselves. Bruce's eyes narrowed as he considered this perspective. Someone who could influence all four of them. Someone with resources and intelligence to orchestrate something this complex. And perhaps, someone with motivation to ensure you were thoroughly occupied for one very specific evening. Bruce turned sharply to his butler. "What day is it, Alfred?" "March 27th, sir, which coincides with the annual review of Wayne Enterprises' Advanced Biotechnology Division," Bruce finished, the realization dawning, "including secure server maintenance and temporary deactivation of certain security protocols during system update." Alfred nodded gravely. "Indeed, sir. A fact known to very few outside the company, but potentially valuable to someone with interest in Wayne Enterprises' research data." Bruce moved quickly to the Batcomputer's main terminal, fingers flying across the keyboard as he remotely accessed Wayne Enterprises' security systems. Initial scans showed no obvious breaches, no alarms triggered, no unauthorized access detected by standard monitoring. But a deeper examination revealed the truth. A sophisticated intrusion, so subtle it had left virtually no digital footprint. Someone had accessed the temporarily vulnerable biotechnology servers during the exact window when security protocols were at their minimum during scheduled maintenance. "What did they access?" Alfred asked, leaning forward to study the display. Bruce continued his analysis, face grim. "Research files, specifically the developmental data on our experimental medical nanotechnology program. Not enough to replicate the technology, but enough to understand its applications and limitations." "Which would be valuable to whom precisely?" "Anyone looking to counter or neutralize the technology," Bruce replied, "or to develop defenses against it before it reaches implementation." Both men fell silent, considering the implications. After a moment, Alfred spoke again. "So, the museum heist, the reservoir infiltration, all elaborately crafted distractions to occupy Batman, while someone accessed Wayne Enterprises' secured servers during their brief vulnerability." "Yes," Bruce confirmed, "but not just someone. Someone who knew about both the server maintenance schedule and could coordinate 4 of Gotham's most notorious criminals into a synchronized operation." "Any theories as to who might possess such remarkable organizational skills?" Alfred inquired, though his tone suggested he already suspected the answer. Bruce's expression hardened as he closed the security analysis and brought up a different file. A comprehensive dossier on one of Gotham's most enigmatic criminals. "There's only one person with the intelligence, the resources, and the particular interest in both Wayne Enterprises' technology and elaborate puzzles." The monitor displayed a stylized question mark as Bruce spoke the name. "Edward Nygma. The Riddler. Most concerning," Alfred observed. "Though one must admire the intricacy of the scheme, a riddle wrapped in an enigma, quite literally." Bruce was already moving toward the Batsuit chamber. "The question is what he's planning to do with the information. Nygma doesn't steal data without purpose." "Will you be pursuing him immediately, sir?" Alfred asked, already preparing the necessary equipment. Bruce paused, considering. "No. First, I need to understand exactly what he took and why it's valuable to him. And I need to ensure the museum and reservoir situations are fully contained." He turned back to the monitor displaying the stolen biotechnology data. "Nygma will want me to know it was him eventually. Solving the puzzle is only satisfying if someone appreciates its complexity. Indeed, sir, his ego has always been his most predictable trait. The cave fell into comfortable silence as Bruce returned to analyzing the security breach, looking for the hidden pattern, the clue Riddler would have inevitably left behind. Outside, the new day continued to brighten over Gotham, the city's citizens waking to news of the museum heist, unaware of the more complex game unfolding beneath the surface. In her apartment across town, Selina Kyle placed the ancient hairpin in a specialized shipping container, preparing it for transport to its new owner, a reclusive historian who would treasure it for its historical significance, rather than its monetary value. The payment for this particular job had been minimal, but the opportunity to participate in Nigma's elaborate puzzle had been irresistible. In her greenhouse sanctuary, Pamela Isley carefully tended to a cutting from the ancient plant specimens documented in the Verdant Codex. Her expression serene as she contemplated the possibility. The reservoir project would be discovered and dismantled, of course, but she had accomplished more than Batman realized, collecting essential data on how her biological agents interacted with Gotham's water infrastructure. Information that would prove valuable for future, more permanent implementation. In his cell at GCPD headquarters, Oswald Cobblepot sat in smug silence despite his apparent capture, knowing that the truly valuable paintings, the ones containing the encoded banking information, were already safely hidden in a secure location, while Batman had been thoroughly occupied with other concerns. And in her temporary holding cell, Harley Quinn hummed contentedly, amusing herself by counting ceiling tiles while waiting for the legal system's bureaucratic machinery to begin turning. Her role in the elaborate distraction had been performed perfectly, creating visible chaos while revealing nothing of importance. Nigma would be pleased, which meant her substantial fee would be deposited as agreed. In his hidden workshop, Edward Nigma studied the biotechnology data extracted from Wayne Enterprises' servers, a satisfied smile playing across his lips. The elaborate museum heist had functioned exactly as designed, occupying Batman's full attention while Nigma executed the real objective. Now he possessed crucial information about the limitations of Wayne Enterprises' nanotechnology, technology that would have rendered many of his most ingenious security countermeasures obsolete. Knowledge was power. Preventing a potential disadvantage was just as valuable as gaining an advantage, and doing it all through an elaborately crafted puzzle that Batman would only fully solve in retrospect. That was the true satisfaction. The Dark Knight would eventually piece it all together, of course, but by then Nigma would have already implemented the necessary countermeasures to protect his operations from Wayne's emerging technology. A preemptive solution to a problem Batman didn't even know existed yet. As the morning sun rose over Gotham, the city continued its eternal cycle. Criminals plotting, heroes defending, and ordinary citizens living their lives in the delicate balance between. The museum heist would make headlines for a day or two before being replaced by the next sensational story. But beneath the visible drama played out a deeper, more intricate game of move and counter-move between the city's most brilliant minds. And in the shadows, where such games unfolded, Batman continued his patient, methodical work, protecting a city that rarely understood the true scope of the threats it faced or the sacrifices made to keep it safe. One puzzle at a time, one night at a time, wrapped in shadow and purpose. Outside Gotham Museum of Art, workers began cleaning up the remnants of the previous night's chaos as early visitors lined up, eager to see the galleries that had been the scene of such drama, unaware that the true heist had taken place elsewhere, in the digital realm where increasingly the city's future would be determined. The visible and the invisible, the obvious and the hidden, existing side by side in the complex ecosystem that was Gotham City. And high above, watching over it all from a stone gargoyle on the Wayne Tower, the Dark Knight began planning his next move in the never-ending chess match that defined his existence. Defender of a city that bred both its greatest threats and its salvation in equal measure. And so our tale of Gotham comes to an end. Let the gentle night embrace you as you drift toward peaceful dreams, knowing that somewhere in the darkness, the Dark Knight watches over his city. If you're not asleep yet, we will now play the ambience of Gotham City at night to help you fall asleep. And if you were just listening to our tales, we will see you next time. Good night and sleep well.